even the resource wars paradigm and sort of conversations that we have, I've started to think about that framing of the cause of modern war as a deeper level of subversion than the initial controlled opposition dynamic. So if we take something like the wars in Afghanistan as a framework here, and we look at the initial story the American citizenry is sold is this terrorist group attacked us on behalf of this actor over here in the Middle East. So we're going to respond, right? That's like story A, the A storyline. That gets the public buy-in to a certain degree, but then there's liberals, like at that time it was liberals who were against that war, who don't buy that controlled opposition dynamic. And then waiting the B storyline, I think was this is about resources. This is about oil. This is about opium. This is about Bushes enriching themselves and the military industrial complex. So all different versions of resources, petrodollar dominance. Now, I don't think that that's not true. I think it largely was a resource war, and many of these things have been resource wars. But I actually think that before you go on the deep dives into sort of the awakening that everyone in this community does, even that resource war, energy war mindset, it sort of, I think, stops you from digging into what's really going on. So in other words, liberals think like, no, we figured out, we got past the A storyline and we figured out that this is actually about these resources. But that implies that the system needs these resources and that the system isn't this entire global web of controlled opposition dynamic that's constantly giving itself what it already needs. So my conclusion there that I think might be being hinted at in this, where the resource doesn't actually really do anything. They don't really tell you anything about this resource. Nobody seems to understand why it's important at all. I started to play with the idea of, is the existence of this ultra rare super resource on Mars itself a story that is just being sold to people for that deeper level proxy war narrative? I don't know if that makes sense, but in the same way that conservatives got to have their it was the dang Al-Qaedas who did it, liberals got to have their it's about the oil, goddammit, when really it wasn't about either of those things. It was about keeping us in a perpetual state of controlled opposition dynamic. That was the latest story that does it, and then on to the next one after that.
Well, yeah, I think that there's something to that. I mean, Cohagen's got Quado, and as long as Quado, this terrorist extremist, is out there, then they're going to need to lock things down. They're going to need a lot of military power there. They're going to need to have some level of control over human activity so that they don't get in the way of any potential, saving everybody from terrorists that they need to do. So that definitely makes sense on some level. I don't know what, attacks they would be accused of in this, but there is definitely that dynamic. I mean, you can see it present in the 9/11 thing, obviously. Both sides of the controlled opposition would agree that there was an attack. Both, that's what the mainstream controlled opposition was there to do. There were definitely planes hitting buildings. Those planes had been hijacked. Then it became, there was also a fair amount of agreement on, just who did it, differing on the motivations, differing on the response, but it was all contained within that. And to pull outside of that would say, this actually wasn't an attack. This was planned. Elements of our government were involved. Other elements of our allies were involved. It was designed to accomplish XYZ agenda items that they already wanted to accomplish and could not in other ways. It was used to cover up ABC, all these other things that they needed to get out of the public's eye, all these other distractions. They were able to reroute economies. They were able to implement laws like the Patriot Act. All of these things were made possible by everyone agreeing that what they would do was argue within the controlled opposition dynamic and not take a step out and say, wait a second, these were not like 19 random terrorists on an airplane because George Bush's old friend was like, hey, guys, it's time to bring down those buildings in America, death to America, the great Satan. That's not what happened. When you pull outside of that, that's where the solutions are. That's where the understanding is. Inside the controlled opposition dynamic, there's nothing.
The Badlands, what are the Badlands? Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.